Yes, I need to report a suspicious person. He is right across the street.
Officer, they're right here. That's the family. A woman stood at the edge of the sidewalk, pointing frantically toward a backyard where the smell of slow-smoked barbecue drifted through the warm summer air. Two police cruisers turned the corner at the same time, their red and blue lights flashing across quiet suburban homes. Tires rolled to a stop with practiced precision. 4 uniformed officers stepped out, alert but disciplined, scanning the scene exactly as they had been trained. Their eyes moved from the house to the people in the yard, searching for danger before making assumptions. The neighborhood fell silent. Conversation stopped. Children who had been laughing only seconds earlier froze. Beside a folding table covered with homemade food, a little girl no older than 8 stood clutching a cup of pink lemonade. Her hands trembled so badly that the cup slipped through her fingers, splashing across the patio. She didn't cry. She simply stared at the officers, confused by why police had arrived at what was supposed to be the happiest day the family had shared in years. Near the grill, a black father slowly placed the barbecue tongs onto the side shelf. Before raising both hands where everyone could see them, his movements were calm, deliberate, and completely free of panic. Across the yard, his wife instinctively stepped closer to their children. She wasn't afraid because she had done something wrong. She was afraid because she understood how quickly fear, confusion, and false assumptions could change an ordinary afternoon into a life-changing moment. Her voice remained steady even as her heart raced. "Kids, stay behind me." The children obeyed immediately. A golden retriever lifted its head from beneath the picnic table. Sensing the tension long before it understood the reason, the dog barked once, then quietly sat beside the youngest child, refusing to leave her side. Smoke continued rising from the barbecue grill. Fresh ribs caramelized over glowing charcoal. Baked beans, cornbread, and peach cobbler rested untouched on the serving table. It looked exactly like hundreds of family cookouts, happening across America every weekend. Yet somehow this backyard had become the center of a police response. One officer stepped toward the open gate, keeping his voice firm but respectful. "Sir, please keep your hands where I can see them." "I will, officer," the father answered calmly. There was no anger, no sudden movement, no argument, only cooperation. The officer noticed it immediately. Years of experience had taught him that truly dangerous situations rarely looked this controlled. His eyes continued studying every detail around him. Children, grandparents, paper plates, lawn chairs, a family celebrating together. Nothing matched the urgent dispatch report they had received, only minutes earlier behind them. The woman who had called 911 continued shouting. "I told dispatch they were dangerous. They've been causing problems all afternoon." I knew something wasn't right the moment they moved into this neighborhood. Several neighbors had gathered on their front lawns. Some watched with folded arms. Others looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with the family across the street. One elderly black woman quietly reached over and held her granddaughter's hand a little tighter. She had lived long enough to recognize this kind of moment, not because she expected violence, but because she knew how easily ordinary people could be judged before anyone bothered to learn the truth. The lead officer glanced back toward the caller. Then he looked once more at the family, standing peacefully in their own backyard. Something didn't fit. His instincts told him to slow down, to observe, to listen. Not every emergency call told the whole story. The black mother gently rested one hand on her daughter's shoulder while keeping her eyes on the officers. There was strength in her posture, not defiance, not fear. Just quiet dignity. She knew her children were watching every word the adults exchanged. Whatever happened next would become a memory they carried for the rest of their lives. The lead officer took another careful step forward. His attention settled on the father standing beside the grill. For a brief second, their eyes met. Recognition flickered across the officer's face. His expression changed almost instantly. The command in his posture softened into disbelief. He looked at the man again, as if trying to convince himself he wasn't mistaken. 3 hours earlier, the backyard looked nothing like a crime scene. Sunlight spilled across the freshly cut lawn, warming the wooden fence that surrounded the property. Cardboard boxes still filled the garage, each one labeled with black marker, kitchen, living room, photos, kids' room. The moving truck had barely disappeared around the corner when laughter replaced the sound of heavy furniture being unloaded. Marcus Carter stood beside a brand-new charcoal smoker, carefully arranging oakwood chunks beneath glowing coals. Cooking had never been just about food in the Carter family. It was tradition. It was conversation. It was where stories were passed from one generation to the next. His father used to say, "Anybody can grill meat. It takes patience to bring people together." Marcus had never forgotten those words. He smiled as smoke slowly curled into the bright Carolina sky. Inside the house, Denise Carter carefully unwrapped a framed family photograph. She gently wiped away a layer of packing dust before placing it on the fireplace mantel. The picture captured 15 years of memories, a wedding, 2 children graduations, birthdays, and countless moments that reminded them how far they had come. Their new home wasn't simply larger, it represented years of sacrifice, late nights, missed holidays, birthdays celebrated over video calls, dreams postponed so their children could have opportunities neither of them had growing up. Denise looked around the spacious living room and smiled to herself. "We finally made it." Marcus overheard her from the backyard. "We sure did there, daughter." 12-year-old Maya burst through the back door carrying a football, almost as big as she was, Dad. "You promised we'd play before everyone gets here." Marcus laughed. "I did say that." He brushed charcoal dust from his hands and caught the football she tossed toward him. Across the yard, 9-year-old Jordan chased Duke, the family's golden retriever, who proudly carried a hot dog bun in his mouth, like it was the greatest prize in the world. Denise walked outside, pretending to sound serious. Duke the dog stopped instantly. His tail wagged. The bun dropped. Everyone laughed. Moments like these couldn't be purchased with a bigger paycheck. For a nicer address, they had to be earned. Denise picked up the bun, shook her head, and scratched behind Duke's ears. "You've been in this house less than 6 hours. Can't you're already making yourself comfortable?" Marcus looked at his wife with quiet admiration. People often noticed her confidence before anything else. She carried herself with the calm strength of someone who had spent nearly 2 decades helping complete strangers through the worst days of their lives. As an emergency room nurse, Denise had seen fear in every form imaginable. Car accidents, heart attacks, violence, loss. Yet somehow she still believed kindness was stronger than anger. That belief shaped their family. Before either child left the house, Denise always reminded them of one thing: treat people with dignity, so even when they forget to treat you with yours. Neither Maya nor Jordan rolled their eyes anymore. They had heard those words since kindergarten. Those words had become part of who they were. By early afternoon, relatives and close friends began arriving one by one. Marcus's older brother pulled into the driveway, carrying homemade peach cobbler. His cousin arrived with sweet tea. A retired police lieutenant, who had mentored Marcus years earlier, brought folding chairs and spent 10 minutes arguing over whose barbecue sauce recipe was better. The backyard slowly filled with laughter instead of noise. Children tossed footballs across the grass. Grandparents swapped stories beneath the shade of a maple tree. Neighbors walking their dogs glanced over as the smell of smoked ribs drifted through the neighborhood. Some smiled politely. Others simply continued walking. Marcus welcomed every familiar face with the same warm handshake. This wasn't about showing off a new house. It was about thanking the people who had walked beside them. Long before success ever arrived, Denise placed fresh lemonade onto the picnic table and quietly watched her husband, greeting everyone she knew. Parts of his life that few people ever would. The nights he came home emotionally exhausted after difficult federal investigations, the cases he couldn't discuss, the anniversaries he missed because duty called first. The weight of protecting communities that would never know his name, none of it had changed the man he was. He still stopped to help strangers change flat tires. He still coached neighborhood kids in basketball during the summer. He still believed respect should be earned through actions, never demanded through titles. That was one reason he rarely spoke about his work. To the children, he was simply Dad. To Denise, he was the man who always made pancakes on Saturday mornings. Even after sleeping only 4 hours, to their friends, he was Marcus, nothing more, nothing less. The title stayed at work. The family came first. Across the street, however, another set of eyes watched every car that parked along the curb. Behind neatly trimmed hedges, a woman slowly adjusted the blinds, without realizing how obvious the movement looked from outside. She watched each guest step from their vehicles. She counted license plates. She studied faces. Her expression hardened every time another family member walked through the Carter's front gate, carrying food, gifts, or lawn chairs. She didn't hear the conversations. She didn't know their names. She never crossed the street to introduce herself. Instead, she quietly reached for her phone. Her camera opened one photograph. Then another, then another. Inside the backyard, nobody noticed. Marcus brushed another layer of barbecue sauce across a rack of ribs, while Maya laughed at one of her uncle's terrible jokes. Denise handed a plate of cornbread to Marcus's mother, who smiled proudly at the home her son had worked so hard to provide. For the Carter family, it was the beginning of a new chapter filled with hope. For someone watching from across the street, it had already become something entirely different. The woman closed her front door, just hard enough for the sound to echo across the quiet street. She stood in her living room for a long moment, staring through the blinds at the Carter family's backyard. Children laughed, music played softly. Someone carried another tray of food to the picnic table. To everyone else, it looked like a family celebrating a milestone. To her, it looked like something that didn't belong. She picked up her phone and dialed 9. Fontainebleau, the dispatcher answered with the same calm voice used for every caller. 911, what's the address of your emergency? She gave the address quickly. I need officers here immediately. What is happening, ma'am? The people across the street are causing a disturbance. The dispatcher continued asking measured questions, gathering information, instead of jumping to conclusions. Can you describe the disturbance? There are a lot of people. How many is a lot? I don't know. 20, maybe more. What exactly are they doing? They're making noise. There are cars everywhere. I don't recognize any of them. The dispatcher paused. Are they threatening anyone? No. Has anyone been injured? No. Do you see any weapons? Another pause. I think I might have. What kind of weapon did you see? I'm not sure. The dispatcher wrote the information exactly as it was given. We'll have officers respond to evaluate the situation. The call ended across the street. Marcus flipped another rack of ribs, without the slightest idea that someone had just reported his family gathering, as suspicious Denise carried fresh lemonade to the table, where Marcus's mother was helping the children fill their plates. She noticed Maya looking around the neighborhood. What are you thinking about? Denise asked. It feels different here. Different good or different bad? Maya shrugged. I don't know yet. Denise smiled gently. Sometimes people need time to know each other. She believed those words as a nurse. She had spent years watching complete strangers become family. Inside hospital rooms, fear often disappeared once people finally talked to one another. The backyard filled with stories. Marcus's brother talked about childhood summers. His mother laughed about the first barbecue Marcus had ever attempted at 16 years old when he nearly burned every hamburger. Everyone laughed except Marcus. I was learning you were learning how to feed the garbage can. His brother joked. The yard erupted in laughter again. Across the street, curtains moved once more. Several neighbors had stepped outside after noticing the police dispatch notification on a neighborhood safety app. Nobody knew why officers were coming. Rumors started before facts ever had the chance. I heard there was a disturbance. I heard somebody reported threats. I heard there might be weapons. Every sentence became a little bigger than the one before it. No one crossed the street to ask the Carter family what was actually happening. No one introduced themselves. No one simply said welcome to the neighborhood. Several minutes later, 2 patrol vehicles turned onto the street. Their emergency lights reflected off parked cars, and living room windows. The music in Marcus's backyard faded as guests noticed the officers approaching. Marcus immediately placed the serving fork on the grill shelf. His first instinct wasn't fear. It was cooperation. He had spent his career working alongside law enforcement professionals. He understood how important it was for officers to safely assess every call they received. He also understood something else. Dispatch information is only the beginning of an investigation. It is never the final truth. Denise quietly gathered the children beside her. She knelt to Maya's level. It's okay, they're here to figure out what's happening. Maya nodded, although the uncertainty remained in her eyes. The first patrol officer stepped through the open gate. His posture was alert but respectful. "Good afternoon, everyone." Marcus answered with the same respect. "Good afternoon, officer. We received a call asking us to check on the situation." Marcus nodded calmly, of course. "Let us know how we can help." The officer looked around carefully. Families. Children, grandparents, neighbors sharing food. Nothing matched the picture of danger described over the phone. His partner quietly observed the same details. No shouting, no fighting. No threatening behavior. Just people enjoying time together. One officer smiled politely at Jordan, who was nervously holding Duke's leash. "That's a beautiful dog." Jordan smiled back. "His name is Duke. Looks like he's protecting the hamburgers." The little boy laughed for the first time since the patrol cars arrived. That small moment changed the atmosphere. It reminded everyone watching that professionalism and respect calm situations far more effectively than assumptions. Denise noticed something important. The officers weren't treating anyone as guilty. They were simply gathering facts, listening, observing, doing exactly what the public expects good officers to do. Across the street, the caller appeared frustrated that events weren't unfolding the way she expected. She began walking toward the officers. "I told dispatch they're causing problems." The lead officer turned respectfully. "Ma'am, we're speaking with everyone involved in assessing the situation, sir. But aren't you going to remove them? We're here to determine facts." That answer mattered because facts protect everyone. Marcus watched quietly. He appreciated what those officers were doing, not because of who he was, but because of how they were choosing to serve. The badge represented responsibility before authority. The uniform represented fairness before judgment. Denise reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand. Neither of them spoke. They simply watched the moment unfold with quiet dignity. Sometimes the strongest response isn't raising your voice. It's allowing truth the time it needs to reveal itself. Every child standing in that backyard was learning a lesson. They would remember for years. Character is revealed under pressure. Respect costs nothing. Assumptions can cost everything. Justice begins with listening before deciding, and communities become stronger when neighbors choose conversation over suspicion. As the story continues, one life-changing truth is about to come to light, one that will leave everyone on that street questioning the assumptions they made. In just a few short minutes, if this story made you stop and think, I'd love to hear from you. If you had been one of the neighbors watching from your porch, what would you have done? Would you have walked across the street to welcome the family, waited to learn the facts, or stayed silent? Share your answer in the comments, because your perspective matters, and tell me what kind of story you'd like to see next. Another powerful story about justice, an inspiring law enforcement story, or a community story where compassion changes everything. Your ideas help shape the next video, and I read as many comments as I can.